Good afternoon, everybody. Please wait a few moments. We've got everybody except Senator Royce, who's going to be joining us from the crowd in a few moments, but let us have a few moments to let everybody join. And thank you again for being here this afternoon. I don't know about y'all, but Houston has been flood, oh, well, not flood city, but downpour city. And from what I understand from Judge Williams, Dallas has been the same. So kind of one of those days. I'll go ahead and also give you a preview. We're going to have on July 9th, what we also expect to be an extremely well-attended webinar. Christian Menifee, who's the Harris County Attorney Democratic candidate for Harris County, will be moderating a discussion on police reform. Christian's actually served already on Houston's police oversight group. He'll be joined by somebody from the SOU, a very active Black Lives Matter leader here in town, and Reginald McCamey, who's engaged in a number of civil rights cases over the years. And we think it'll be very interesting and, I'm not going to say timely, but overdue, and it'll be a great focus on a lot of issues that certainly are going to be on everybody's front mind by July 9th. Okay. Please bear with us. We're trying to find Senator Royce West, and hopefully we'll have him in the main area briefly. The other thing that I'll give you a heads up, and I think since this is mostly but not exclusively lawyers, everybody's full well aware of, but I'll give you a heads up. We're gonna, every candidate is gonna have a portion of time to visit with you about kind of what their vision is for our Supreme Court and our Court of Criminal Appeals. Thank you, Judge Clinton, for joining us again. But I wanna give you a heads up and a reminder, you know, any questions are welcome. The only screening that may happen is everybody has to abide by Canon 5 regarding views on pending cases or potential litigation. And everybody obviously is aware of that, but to the extent that somebody's chat gets overlooked at the end, when I expect we'll have about 50 minutes, that's on me, and that's part of my job, is to make sure that we're all consistent with that. Okay. If I can ask Mr. Mullins at Riverside whether we've got Senator Royce there, otherwise we'll go ahead and get started.
He is not signed in as an attendee under Royce or West or Judge.
Okay. All right. Well, we may have a Zoom bomb from Senator Royce at some point. If you're okay with that, we'll go ahead and get started.
Mike,
yes, sir.
Call and send you a text. If I get a hold of him, maybe you can just have him later at the end.
Yeah. So the game plan, we're going to switch up instead of Senator Royce at the get-go. And by the way, because we are a nonpartisan group that's always supported Democrats from its inception, 2003. We're going to also be joined by MJ Hagar for July 9th, and we'll do our best to make sure she's at the get-go as well. But I think it's a great opportunity for everybody here to hear a little bit face-to-face so late in the campaign with the July 14th runoff from the two senatorial candidates statewide as well. Our first candidate that I'd like to introduce and let her kind of run with it would be Justice Gisela Triana. And I'll go ahead, Justice, and give you your time and thank you again for joining us today from, it looks like a very sunny Austin.
It is a very sunny Austin, so muggy, but sunny. We've had rain for the last couple of days, but today we have a really pretty day. Thank you, Mike, for letting us join y'all. I'm very excited to be here with the other three candidates for the Supreme Court and with Judge Clinton, who's running for the Court of Criminal Appeals. Thank you for your time. I want to tell you a little bit about myself, for those of you who don't know me, and then I want to tell you why it is that I'm running for a place 8 on the Supreme Court. I've been a judge for over 24 years, went to UT Law School, graduated in 1988, been practicing law for over 30 years, which, you know, when I started, thought that those lawyers would be really, really old. So I guess I'm in the really, really old category now. For the last 24 years, I started off as a municipal court judge here in Austin, was elected as the Justice of the Peace, was elected as a county court at law judge, was then elected as a district judge where I was for 14 years before I recently in 2018 elected to the Third Court of Appeals in Austin. If I get elected, I'll be the only person to have served on the Supreme Court that has served on every trial level in Texas. And I think that's extremely important to make sure that we have judges who have trial experience. I don't think everybody needs to be a judge, but I do think that it brings a certain quality of experience to the Supreme Court, and I am proud of that. I want to tell you a little bit about my history. My parents came here from Cuba in 1962. They were 18 years old, and I don't need to tell you probably, and you know, that was right after Castro took over and Cuba became communist. They came fleeing communism. I was born in Houston, Texas, actually at the original Herman Hospital, and grew up hearing these horrible stories that were told in my family about, you know, my family, my parents' losing everything they had. My grandparents were farmers. They lost their farms. My grandfather was, you know, put in jail. He used to fly non-combat cargo airplanes for the military, for the Army under Batista. And so they came here with this idea of coming to a better country. And at the same time that I was hearing this at home, I was learning in, you know, the public school system about our history, our American history, and was learning about this idea that there's a constitution and there's a legal system, and you couldn't, you know, you shouldn't, and you couldn't lose your life, your property, your liberty, unless there was due process. And the government could not just come and take these things away from you without due process in the courts. And I fell in love with it and decided at a very, very early age that I wanted to be a lawyer, that I wanted to be a part of this system that would protect my family and everybody else from having the government just kind of, you know, do as it pleased. Have been very proud of being a judge, but I'm running this time because somewhere along the way, our Supreme Court has lost sight of that. Our Supreme Court right now has lost sight of the rule of law. It is extremely important. I think it's kind of ironic that we get tagged with, when I say we, Democratic judges get tagged with those activist judges that want to legislate, especially in Austin, because of course everybody knows that everything bad, liberals come from Austin. And I think that they have won the war of the words, because if you look at what our Supreme Court is doing right now and has been doing for the last several decades, they're the ones that have become activists. We have a court that is no longer independent. We all learn, you know, that you're supposed to have 3 co-equal branches of government, the judiciary being the third. And unfortunately, that is not the case. I'd like to talk about, I don't know if y'all were aware of, Haynes and Boone's did a study that came out in August of 2019. And what they did was they looked at specifically the 4 courts, the 2 in Houston Court of Appeals, the 3rd court in Austin, and the 5th court in Dallas. And they looked at from August of 2018 through or September 2018 through August of 2000, courts became dominated by Democrats. And the interesting thing, I think for me, the interesting thing they found is that during those 4 months where the courts were all Republican, the court's judgments for the plaintiff, 8 times more than they would reverse a judgment for the defendant. The numbers were 39% to 5%. And then when they looked at what the courts were doing after we got elected, what they saw was that there was a 17% to 18%. So they were reversing plaintiffs' verdicts at 17% and defendants' verdicts at 18%. And to me, what is more than anything indicative of what we have and what we need is the balance. You didn't all of a sudden see, you know, this fear that we were going to be elected and all of a sudden the Court of Appeals were going to become, you know, bomb throwers and we were going to get rid of jurisprudence. That didn't happen. All that was happening was that we became a much more balanced court. And that's what we need in the Texas Supreme Court. We have 9 Republicans. We haven't had a Democrat on the court in over 20 years. And you can see it by their policy making. You don't have to go very far. You know, for those of you who are familiar with the Meachum return case, that, you know, after the U.S. Supreme Court decided that, you know, the Supreme Court, there was a case that was going through which was thrown out based on that precedent, and the Supreme Court decided and denied, you know, the petition. They didn't take it. A week later, they had Paxton and they had Abbott and they had Patrick doing a press release and a press conference about how this is, you know, some form of injustice. And they did something that I haven't seen in my 30 years of practicing, which is they reversed their petition refused, and they took the case up. Not only did they take the case, they found unanimously that just because the Supreme Court of the United States had said that, you know, everybody had the right to marry whoever they wanted, regardless of gender or sex, they decided that that didn't necessarily mean that the city of Houston had the right to provide the same benefits. Somehow, don't ask me how they made that, you know, mental gymnastics, but they did. And so they sent it back. And it was clearly, it is as clear as you can get a, you know, a scene of playing politics in the courts. And that's why we are running, because we are wanting a balanced court. We deserve a balanced court. Justice needs to come back to the court. You know, it's funny because when we're running in the primary, lawyers tend to be better, but I bet you that there's lawyers right now in our presence who don't even know who all of the 9 justices on the Supreme Court are, and definitely don't. And that you're trying to explain to people who you're running against. What does the Supreme Court do? How does it affect our lives? You know, the public finance system, how, you know, it had been found that, or the district court in Travis County had found that the legislature was not funding, you know, public education in the manner that it needed to. The Constitution requires that the legislature fund a free and efficient system. And, you know, the court found that it was not efficient. And the Supreme Court, you know, found that, no, this is not a good system. Definitely, you know, they're not putting in as much as they could, but refused to do their constitutional job, which was to make sure that the legislature did their job. They just said, well, you know, let the legislature fix it. And so time and time again, we can talk about all sorts of cases that affect us all. The Supreme Court has just blatantly been political about. They are acting like a, you know, just part and parcel with the Republican Party, or with the big corporations that are giving them money. And, you know, everybody knows that if you have, and you made a big contribution to them, the chances that your case is going to get picked up by the court, the Supreme Court, are much greater than if you don't. We live in the crazy time right now with coronavirus. You know, our numbers, Houston's doing horribly. I know here in Austin for the last 12 days, we have just every day beaten the number of new cases that we have the day before. We're worse off now than we actually were when we started, you know, sheltering at home. And yet this court, after very rightly deciding back in March that there was going to be a moratorium on evictions, because we have over 1 million people without jobs here in Texas, in May, cold-heartedly decided to go ahead and let those evictions proceed. And this is not a legal policy. This is just a policy. This is not based on any, you know, legal interpretation of any statute. It's based on what it's clear that we can do and what they can still do. Nathan Hecht, when he was interviewed, I believe by the Tribune about this, said, well, you know, if things get wrong, we can go ahead and do it again. So everybody understands that they have the right to protect people. And so at the time where even our governor is finally saying, you have to shelter in place, please don't go out unless you need to, we have people that are getting evicted from their homes. Where are they supposed to be sheltering? On the streets? So it is clear to me that, you know, we need to change. And that is why I'm running. I'm running because I want to get politics out of the court. I want to go back to a court that is going to do the right, the just, and the fair things. And having spoken to, you know, plaintiff lawyers and defense lawyers, let me tell you, everybody wants the same thing. Everybody wants a judge who will listen and who will apply the law equally. They don't want, you know, they want just a level playing field. That's it. I don't think that's too much to ask. And therefore, you know, we're here to talk about the issues, but also to ask for your support. And I'm going to make an ask for everybody, all of the judges that are here. It is really hard running a statewide campaign, especially now in coronavirus, as a judge. Our funding comes almost 100% from lawyers. So if you haven't given to any of our campaigns, I'm asking you to please do so, because this affects you, you know, more than every other citizen. This is where y'all are making your livelihood. And if you're like we are, you know, you should be tired of what's going on. So you can go to judgetriana.com and donate today. And I think with that, Mike, I don't know how we're on time, but I'll let somebody else take the floor.
Thank you so much, Justice. So I think the takeaway is that we need a fair and balanced court. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, it would be nice. You know, the idea that we have fairness and balance and justice, you know, that would be extremely nice. I haven't seen it in a while.
Well, my hope would be that there's a lot of voters that have heard fair and balanced about 1,000,000 times. So maybe that rings a bell with them. Thank you so much for that. And thank you for kind of a great preview. We're joined now by Senator Royce. Thank you very much, Senator. And we had a little bit of a technical glitch, but we promised him at the get-go. But thank you for joining us. And we probably have a lot to learn from you about running a statewide race already. So thank you for being here. And we're happy you can share with us what's going on in your campaign.
You know, Mike, I'm not a stranger to the bar. I've been a lawyer now for some 40 years. The fact is that I've been a state senator now for the past 27 years, and I'm ready to be your United States Senator. When you begin to look at the role of a United States Senator, one of the roles is making certain that you look at the nominees of the president for the Supreme Court. Well, we know that this president, who I call Pinocchio, has, along with Mitch McConnell, been able to fill 200 federal court vacancies in this country. If that doesn't scare you to death, I don't know what will. Given what has been going on with the Department of Justice, Ken Barr, what he's done in terms of subverting justice in this country, in terms of making certain that when all of us know the rule of law, that they do everything they can in order to bend and twist it. We need to make certain that we have a person in Washington that understands the Constitution and will make certain that they discharge their constitutional duty as it relates to nominees to the United States Supreme Court. Thank God for Ruth Bader Ginsburg. You know, we got about 6 more months to deal with Pinocchio. Lie after lie after lie. My friends, we can continue to be in Texas a victim of history, or we can make history. I want to be able to make history as the first African American to be a United States Senator. Not because I'm African American, but because I've done the work in the party, in the state Senate, and will be the best candidate to win in November. Let's talk about it just for a few moments. When you begin to look at what I anticipate doing today, I'm applying for a job. When you look at my resume, what you see is that I've been a public servant for the past 27 years. I've been a Democrat in a legislative body that's been dominated by Republicans, both the legislative and the executive branches of government. But I've been able to still get things done of substance that's important to all Texans. When you begin to think about issues of criminal justice, Royce West has been there. Education, women's rights, immigrant rights, climate change, voting rights, civil rights, procurement opportunities for minority businesses. Royce West has been there. Let's just talk about criminal justice for a minute. The issues of criminal justice that I've championed has been body cameras, dash cameras, racial profiling, getting police the best vest possible to protect them against high-powered bullets. Those things are important. When you begin to look at issues concerning education, Royce West has served on education ever since Bob Bullock was the lieutenant governor of this state. He put me on it because he knew what he was doing. I've been very instrumental in getting teachers and other educational professionals pay raises, taking monies and making certain that they go to those schools that are in desperate need of them, of those resources. Also helped in terms of passing HB 3 that, frankly, put the onus on the back of the state to pay for education in the state as opposed to local property taxpayers. I built a university, the first public university in Dallas, the first public law school in this state since 1968 is the law school that Royce West put in the Dallas area. You see, being a lawyer for some 40 years and getting my law degree from the University of Houston, I understand the significance of higher education. Not only did I help build universities in Dallas, but also in San Antonio and Killeen, and dealt with a whole host of issues concerning financial aid and the cost of education. Climate change, people talk about it, but I mean, I've done something about it. You go up to Texas Tech and you see all those windmill farms up there. Royce West had a hand in making certain that that came to fruition. Immigrant rights, I've been on the vanguard of immigrant rights in the state of Texas since John Whitmire and others were involved in it. And so you see, I have the experience that's necessary to be your next United States Senator. I have also the experience of being able to bring people together, which is important in the Democratic Party, as you well know. I have the support of the Tejano Democrats, the Mexican American Democrats, the Texas Coalition of Black Democrats, their clubs, and a whole host of other organizations, the American Federation of Teachers, the Communication Workers of America. This morning, I got the endorsement of the Houston Chronicle. I've also been endorsed by the Austin Chronicle. I've been endorsed by the Houston Chronicle, the Dallas Morning News, and the Fort Worth Star-Telegram. But don't let me stop there. When you begin to look at Democrats in the state of Texas, now you know that, many of you know that the Senate Democratic Campaign Committee decided to choose the candidate that they wanted without even interviewing any of us. And so they decided to choose my opponent. But the Democratic Party, the Texas Democratic Party, told the DSCC to stay out of Texas's business. We choose who we want to be the nominee, not Washington. And towards that particular end, when you begin to look at Democrats right there in Harris County, let's just talk Harris County, your mayor, Sylvester Turner, Rodney Ellis, Al Green, Sylvia Garcia, most of the Democratic delegation from Harris County is supporting Royce West for the United States Senate, Mike. When you begin to look at your city council, I have ample support on your city council also. And so when you think about what direction that we need to go in, I say to you that I'm ready for this particular job assignment, that I will make certain that I continue to solicit the support of each and every one of you, and I'd ask that you support my candidacy for the United States Senate. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Senator Royce West. Thank you very much, especially for being on time, and I appreciate it. The other thing I want to compliment you on, you did a really good job with, actually we got 185 folks. They're not all from Harris County, but you did a really good job flagging U of H law to make sure that the Houston people don't think you're too Dallas. So thank you for that as well.
I had to make sure I did that.
Thank you, Senator Royce. And you're welcome to stay along. I know you have other things committed, but as long as you can, you're welcome to stay on. Thank you. And we'll go ahead and now move to Judge Staci Williams from Dallas, a wet Dallas right now. And like I said before, I'm going to give every opportunity to go ahead and let this candidate and this great judge in Dallas introduce herself to y'all. And thank you for being here, Judge Williams.
Thank you so much, Mike. It is an absolute pleasure, and I thank you for this opportunity to speak again to HCDLA. You know, it was less than a year ago when I came down to Houston and you had your seminar at Hotel Zaza, and I got a chance to meet many of your members, and I'm so happy that so many of them could join today. For those of you who haven't had the opportunity to meet me, I am Staci with an I Williams, and I am your Democratic nominee for the Texas Supreme Court, Place 7, and I am asking for your support. It's become clear that the Texas Supreme Court is out of touch with everyday Texans, and their decisions are affecting our lives, from vote by mail, evictions, foreclosures, and they will have an effect on our lives for generations when they discuss issues such as redistricting and gerrymandering and eminent domain. So it is imperative that we have change at the Texas Supreme Court. And I know that the Democratic mantra is, you know, let's get Biden in, and I agree with that. But if we don't have change at every level of court, the change at the top will be insignificant. We must vote up or all the way down the ballot. In fact, I don't agree with the mantra that says, oh, we're scared there's no more straight party ticketing. Yes, you can have straight party ticketing, straight party voting. You just have to individually vote for each candidate. So yes, we can straight party ticket. We just don't have the button. And again, with the Democrats that I'm running with, we are going to bring back a fair and balanced court. I bring to you over 27 years of legal experience. Not only am I a 2-term district court judge in Dallas County, but I've been a municipal court judge as well as an administrative judge for the EEOC. I've been a trial attorney with the EEOC. I've been an arbitrator where I've issued detailed written decisions for DART, which is our regional transportation system, the U.S. Postal Service, NASDAQ FINRA, which adjudicates disputes between financial houses and their customers. I've been an arbitrator for the Federal Mediation Conciliation Service and the Washington Metropolitan Airport Board. I tell you all, and I've also been in-house corporate counsel in the telecommunications, retail, and defense industries. And I tell you all of that so that you know that you've got a candidate who's qualified, who has a diverse background, and is ready to tackle every issue that will be heard at the Texas Supreme Court. I'm a graduate of the Georgetown University Law Center, Smith College with a degree in economics, and the Hockaday School from Dallas. But besides my qualifications and my education, you need a justice who's going to be committed to the community. And I have been. I'm most proud of my Citizen Civil Academy, which is a free, nonpartisan program that I created to educate citizens about the civil court process. Now, one of the unique factors of this program is that I pay for this program out of my campaign funds. There are no federal, state, or local funds involved. So it's truly my gift, not only to the citizens of Dallas County. We've taken the Citizen Civil Academy to Collin County and Smith County. We explore the types of cases a civil judge hears and what happens to a case from the time it's filed until it's disposed. We've had individuals as young as 7 and as seasoned as 92. And in the 5 years, we've graduated over 350 citizens. Now, this race for the Texas Supreme Court, my race and all the others, it is winnable. More Democrats voted in all of our races for the Texas Supreme Court in this primary, but we need every single vote. Most of us not only have Republican challengers, we have libertarians. And so remember, if you want to vote for change, you have to vote in every race. And I will also give my website. We do need funds. This is a very challenging time to be running for office when you can't even go outside. So my address is www.judgestaci, and that's Staci with an I.com. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Judge Williams, and appreciate it. And I'm not saying that it was the reason you won the primary, but it certainly didn't hurt coming down to our annual meeting last year, and we enjoyed having you there. Matter of fact, this is a heads up for everybody. We're having a board meeting, but we anticipate, God and coronavirus willing, having a event in October at the Hotel Zaza, and we hope you can join us as well then. So thank you very much for being here today. Thank you, Judge. Our next is Judge Tina Clinton, who hopefully, there she is. There you go, Judge Clinton. We'll go ahead and spotlight you, and you're running for the Court of Criminal Appeals, which is one of those races that people need to pay more attention to and probably will. So thank you for being here and sharing your thoughts about that race and not just the fate of the Supreme Court, but the fate of the Court of Criminal Appeals with a great candidate like you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much to the HCDLA for having me. And my name is Tina Clinton. I'm a sitting judge here in Dallas County. I preside over Criminal District Court number 1, which is the oldest criminal district court in the state of Texas. But more importantly, I am the Democratic nominee for the Court of Criminal Appeals Place 4. There are 3 seats that are up in the criminal appeals. My race, as well as Judge Brandon Birmingham and former Judge Elizabeth, 3 of us Democratic nominees. Just to tell you a little bit about myself, I'm actually a first-generation immigrant. English is my second language, and so I have a little bit of a different background. My parents and I immigrated here in the early 70s from South Korea. And my experience learning English, learning about the community here in the United States, and becoming a US citizen, becoming naturalized, and having an education here and a future here is one that I treasure. But that background also gives me a very different feel and a very different experience when it comes to our legal structure, especially the criminal justice system. The criminal justice system, I think, is one that many of you would agree is one that is being highlighted with the protests as well as the experiences that many Americans are having. It is a very relevant discussion. It is a discussion that the Court of Criminal Appeals needs to heed. However, you can tell from the opinions and the reversals and the decisions that the Supreme Court has given, especially in capital murder cases, that the Court of Criminal Appeals really has not decided that they are going to veer off their own course and agenda. Instead, the Supreme Court is being relied upon to take these cases up, and they are sending them back down with instructions and questions as to whether, like for example, in the Andrews case that just came down, whether mitigation was even considered. These are issues that criminal justice cannot afford to have. These are not missteps that Texans can afford. And so it is now time for us to have a diversity of thought, a diversity of legal experience, a diversity of background, a diversity of races and experiences that need to be taken to that court. 2020 is our best chance of taking 3 of the 9 benches. All 9 are being held by Republicans right now, and that means that they are in lockstep, and the decisions that they are making are being overturned by the Supreme Court on a fairly often and regular basis. I invite you to take a look at some of those decisions and opinions and decide for yourself what you think about what the Court of Criminal Appeals is doing. I believe that Texans deserve better. I believe that our experience is one that is very needed. For example, and Mike, I see you pop up, and that means that I'm not out of time, but I will highlight this one need, I believe, and that is that the 3 judges that you have running have experience in the lower courts. I have experience in the municipal court, the county courts, the district courts. We have experience that is not up there right now. And there is a difference between reading a transcript when you have not been a prosecutor, a defense attorney, and a trial court judge, versus when you have that experience to be able to know what is going on in the courtroom, what it feels like to deal with victims and defendants and their families. There is a very different look to how a judge with that kind of experience looks at a case that is before them, even if it is on paper. That experience needs to be brought back up to the Court of Criminal Appeals. I'm asking, just like my colleagues that are running, that you help us by not only supporting us with your vote, but supporting us with your voice, because this is a group that actually can and will be listened to because you're lawyers, and that when you are that you support us with your dollars. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. And Mike, if I have any time left, I'm going to cede it back to you.
Well, thank you. And I didn't mean to give you a heads up. I probably was doing that before, but thank you for doing that. And thank you for highlighting the importance of the race you've got. And I'm as guilty as many lawyers that primarily, but not exclusively, do civil, of not paying enough attention to what's been going on in the Court of Criminal Appeals, and having someone like you, such a solid candidate, is very welcome. Thank you very much. Next, we're going to have, thank you, Kathy Cheng from Houston, and is going to visit with us about her race, kind of what motivated her background, and another one of the great reasons that we've seen today that we have hope for change on the Supreme Court. Thank you, Judge.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Kathy.
Good afternoon, everyone. I want to thank Mike and all the members of the Harris County Democratic Lawyers Association for putting this forum together. I'm so honored to be here today to be able to speak to y'all. Again, my name is Kathy Cheng. I'm running for Supreme Court, Texas, Place 6. The reason I'm running for this position is the fact that when I hear the words resonate with respect to one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all, that part of the justice for all isn't just about justice for those with money or with power or with certain class. I see, as an immigrant from a country that had political instability and there's no quality or fairness or balance in the system that we so look forward to in the judicials, that brings heart to me as far as why it's so important to have fairness and balance in our judicial system. As a private practitioner in the Houston area for almost 20 years, and as a adjudication officer for City of Houston in the past, in my years of practice in serving in those positions as also as arbitrator and mediator, I've come to realize while we have those words in the Pledge of Allegiance, and we have the laws saying with the due process, equality, everything else that we have in the law books, usually it's not effectuated. And that saddens me, because for someone who values those words as an immigrant and who grew up in this country believing every one of those words, every time I say the Pledge of Allegiance or when I read the Constitution, whether it's the US Constitution or the Texas Constitution, those words mean something to me. Because until you've been from a country that has political instability and you see the disparities and the treatments of citizens of various classes of wealth or backgrounds, you don't understand just how important having fairness and balance in the judicial system. For many of you, and some of you are my mentors and continue to be and have been mentors in the past, some of you even to this day sometimes ask me, Kathy, are you sure you want to take this job? Because going from a private practice, which is very lucrative compared to being a servant, public servant, you're giving up a lot. Well, that's true. When you compare the amount in private practice versus being a public servant, that is a big significant difference. But when you value the true fairness and balance in the judicial system versus what I'm giving up, going from private practice to being a public servant, there's no comparison. There's only one reason. And the answer is, I want to be a public servant. Because the reason my parents immigrated to this country was for the fact of having equal rights, the due process, all of that we read in books. But unfortunately, that's not always happening. So folks, for me, it's a different background than most of the folks. We all know that we all grew up with one set of lenses when we're born. But based on our legal experiences, based on our life experiences, we as individuals gain different lenses that allows us to see things that others cannot see. Those 9 justices on the Texas Supreme Court at this moment, they're born with one lenses and they continue to use those one set of lenses. While the candidates that went before me and myself, we have such diverse legal background, we have such diverse life background that we not only have one set of lenses that we were born with, we have so many set of lenses that allow us to see the different points of view in a law. Because we all know that the law isn't always black or white. There are grayness areas. And it takes those significant individuals with the ability to see those gray areas that's gonna make great justices who will make sure that the court is fair and balanced. I'm Kathy Cheng. I am one of the 4 judicial candidates for the Texas Supreme Court who has that ability. I'm so honored to run with all my colleagues who went before me and also the colleagues on the Court of Criminal Appeals. Let's not forget, while a lot of people are out there, some of you included, who feel that we need to gain the House and gain the seats on the congressional levels, federal levels, but let's not forget, the one who interprets the law is the judicials. As we've seen recently, what has come down from the Texas Supreme Court and just how important it is that we win these positions. Now, you may be asking, what is it that you can do to help us? Well, first of all, it's not just your votes that's going to help us. You have an unlimited number of sources out there, your clients, your colleagues out there who are not here right now, who are not listening to this. You could send an email or a phone call or a text. Say, hey, have you heard about these candidates, or have you considered about these candidates? See, the thing is, somebody asked the question earlier, how are you going to turn out the voters in November? One of the things that I hone in on is education, because knowledge is power. You all are the brightest folks out there. As lawyers, you have the ability to persuade people, even those who don't care to vote, even those who feel like now it's no point. Texas has been red for so long. Folks, I think I proved that in 2018, that we have the ability to turn this around. We have the ability to gain 4 seats on the Texas Supreme Court and 3 seats on the Court of Criminal Appeals. If we take the time and invest in our future and say, it is enough what we see right now, and I've had it. Let's make sure we bring fairness and balance into our Supreme Court. So folks, with your help, I'm asking you, text, phone, email, blast them out. And last but not least, donate to us. I'm Kathy Cheng, Cheng for Change. That's CHENGFORJUSTICE.com, chengforjustice.com. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And by the way, I'll share this. We not only have a great folks, candidates here, but they're extremely good about staying on schedule, which leads us to our final, but we're gonna have a chance to please go ahead and make sure you put questions on the chat. This is really a great time to hear these people that are working so hard out there, even in this tough times, what you need to hear from them that they haven't already shared. Judge Meachum, my understanding is you've saved the best from your presentation from last time for today, so we're welcome and thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me here. I'm going to try to share. Hopefully that's working. Are you seeing that, Mike?
Yep, we're all current, thank you.
Okay, great. Well, it's great to be back. My name is Judge Amy Clarke Meachum. I was here a couple of weeks ago and gave you sort of the top lines of the poll we did last month. I'm really proud to be your Democratic nominee for Chief Justice of the Texas Supreme Court. So let me walk through some of these other poll issues that we polled and that we want to share with you today. For any of you who weren't with us a couple of weeks ago, I'll do a real quick review. Our poll had Trump leading Biden by 5.5 points. In my race on the first ballot, I was only 2 points behind the Chief Justice. So we are already within the margin of error. And when we polled a generic Democrat running against a generic Republican for the Court of Criminal Appeals, the margin was 1 point. I think you all know a couple of days ago that the PPP poll showed that Biden was only 2 points behind Trump in the state. And so the takeaway is very simple and very clear. Texas is a battleground state, and this is our best chance to win in 25 years. Let's talk. We wanted to try in the second half of our poll to get a feel for voter sentiment toward the court and the judiciary. And while I can't present all 35 questions or the findings, I have picked 4 questions that I think are both substantive and instructive that I wanted to share with you today. So we're going to start with how the court is constructed. Then we're going to look at whether or not the public believes it has a bias. And then finally, we'll look at the direction that people want to see the court move. And we're going to juxtapose my underlying judicial philosophy with my opponents. So let's think about the future of the Texas Supreme Court and what the court will look like 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 years from now. The first thing we need to do is consider how the justices get chosen. The judicial election versus appointment question will probably be a question that has the single greatest impact on the direction of the court for the next decade or 2. And I want to say at the outset that there is no perfect way to pick judges. Whether we elect judges or appoint them or do some sort of hybrid, there is no perfect system. That said, this is one area where my opponent and I have very different views. In 2016 and in 2018, you saw a bunch of women, and more specifically women of color, win judgeships, especially in counties like Dallas and Harris. You also saw a lot of Democrats, like Justice Triana, my former colleague on the Travis County Court, win seats on our courts of appeals. You saw some courts of appeals flip from majority Republican to majority Democrat. The Republican response to this has been to pass a bill last session establishing a commission to look into scrapping the entire system and moving from judicial elections to judicial appointments. They lost a bunch of elections, so now they want to change the rules. Well, they're on the wrong side of the electorate on this issue. Texas voters overwhelmingly favor judicial elections over a judicial appointment system by an 81-11 margin, according to our polling. Even 76% of Republicans want to elect judges. And I want to be real candid about this. This one's personal to me. I grew up in a working class family from Lorena. That's a suburb of Waco, for those of you who don't drive I-35 on a regular basis. And I didn't know any judges growing up. I didn't know any lawyers. I worked hard, I played by the rules, and decided 10 years ago that I wanted to be a judge. So I put my name on the ballot and ran. The only reason I'm a judge today is because we elect judges, and my story is not unique. And when I think of all those Democrats who just won judgeships in 2016 and 2018, a lot of those ladies are like me. They're not on exclusive lists for gubernatorial appointments. So finally, I'd like to say that when this commission, as I anticipate, recommends judicial appointments for place elections, that requires a constitutional amendment, which requires a 2/3 vote in the Texas House and the Texas Senate, and then a majority vote of the people. As a practical matter, I don't see that happening. There's very little in American life today that is 81%. So we're not going to spend too much more time on that. I think it's better to spend time improving the system of judicial election that we do have. So let's go through this. We wanted to get a sense of whether or not Texans felt like the court had a bias or was predetermined to favor a certain side. So we asked Texans if they believe the court mostly sides with wealthy and corporate interests or the middle class and working people. And I'll be honest, while this answer wasn't surprising, it was disappointing. By a 53-4 margin, Texans believe this court sides with wealthy and corporate interests over middle class and working Texans. Texas families are not best served by judges who put their thumbs on the scales and have a predetermined agenda. Instead, we need judges with integrity who will fairly interpret the law with the goal of obtaining the most just result. The correct answer here, of course, should be neither, but that's not the perception, or what some would say would be reality. And that's a real problem if the true goal is equal justice under the law. So one of the reasons that so many Texans believe the court has a bias is because of stories and cases like this one. On February 24th, back pre-coronavirus, the Texas Tribune published an expose where a multi-million donor in the Republican Party set out to mathematically test the idea that campaign contributions influenced the elected justices on the Texas Supreme Court. These numbers are his, and all of this is laid out in great detail in the article. But he concluded that billion-dollar companies represented by certain elite Texas law firms were 5.5 times more likely to win some or all of what they were seeking from the all-Republican Texas Supreme Court. My one ask of each of you on the call is to read this article. If you care about justice being delivered in an unbiased and impartial manner by judges with integrity and common sense who can't be bought, then this article will really impact you. In terms of this election cycle, this is a really important slide. In addition to being one of 9 votes, everybody here knows the Chief Justice is afforded additional powers where she can impact and influence the direction of the court for her 6-year term. You're the administrative head of the State Bar of Texas. You oversee the Board of Law Examiners, great influence on the rules committees, the disciplinary rules, etc. So we asked Texans in this poll, for those of you who weren't on the call last week, it was 51% modeled with Republicans. But even with that being the background number, only 44% of Texans said they wanted a conservative Chief Justice. The majority of Texans, 56%, actually want to move away from a far right and conservative court to one that is more fair and reasonable and balanced. So finally, let's talk judicial philosophy. And a really important slide to me, because I feel like judges and judicial candidates on the left have had a hard time communicating our judicial philosophy, especially when juxtaposed to hard right and very conservative judges. You know, the Republicans, the conservative side, they start grooming lawyers early. The Federalist Society has built an entire infrastructure for grooming and appointing judges from the far right and on the ideological right. Frankly, the left hasn't had a comparable effort. There's the American Constitutional Society, which not as many people know about. There's a whole host of groups, obviously on the progressive side, that care about individual legal issues, but there's no effort that really matches it like the Federalist Society. And frankly, this has left sometimes folks on the left, we've lost the intellectual and philosophical argument to textualists and constructionists for many years. But I was curious about how my judicial philosophy stacked up against strict constructionism with voters. And I fully expected to lose this question. All of us are lawyers, or most of us are on this call. We've lived this and how much they have permeated textualism. So I fully expected to lose this. But by a 2-to-1 margin, Texans prefer a judge who interprets the law fairly with the goal of obtaining the most just result over a strict constructionist judge. So every good judge knows you start with a statute, but you shouldn't be afraid to end there. And you really shouldn't use textualism and strict constructionism to simply justify a predetermined or partisan agenda, which some would argue has happened more and more recently, especially. We shouldn't just be grammarians or copy editors. We should use reason. We should use common sense to interpret the law fairly with the goal of obtaining the most just result. That's my philosophy as a district court judge. It will be my philosophy when I'm a Texas Supreme Court Chief Justice. And I really want to thank the HCDLA for having us back, for having all the candidates back. I'm so fortunate to be running with such a great group of diverse candidates who I think represent the court system and the Democratic Party very well. So thank you so much to Mike and the HCDLA for your time and attention, and hopefully I am within my time as well.
You're wonderful. Y'all have been fantastic, and I hope you can all stick around and go ahead. Harold will ask to go ahead and put it on gallery view for all the folks on the webinar. For a few, we don't have a ton of chat, but I'll throw out while I'm looking through them. One of the things I'm guessing, but you know, not having run for office, that's probably good is you're not traveling. But I've also heard from, particularly in Harris County, the folks that ran first for district court and then for the Court of Appeals, the camaraderie and the relationships they develop by going to all kinds of events across their district. How's that working out for y'all now?
So we spend a lot of time on Zoom calls. It's a tough time to campaign. When Kathy ran 2 years ago, you saw her and, Judge Sandell and everybody else going everywhere. The good news is you can get to a lot of people doing Zoom. So we are on a constant, usually text thread or phone call at least once a week.
Mike,
Oh yeah, I was using my own trick and got caught. Thank you so much for that. And I'm guessing that's right. And that's probably, I guess, the good and bad about crazy times. We've already got, the first one I noticed was from Mark Ash, who was appreciating the shout out to the Libertarians. That's a freebie. We're not going to worry about that. Thank you for joining us. The second one has to do with, I guess it's a more general, and this is for anybody. What are you doing to kind of increase blue wave coming hopefully across the state in 2020? I'm of the folks that believe that this is an opportunity that folks are not expecting, and that it's candidates like you down ballot that are going to do so much more to drive participation than we really can expect. And so go ahead, I'll throw that out for whoever wants to speak to that.
I'll address that if you all don't mind. So here's the thing. In the past, I've always talked about grassroots campaigning, but in the wake of the pandemic situation, we definitely had to shift our campaigning techniques. So while we're still monitoring the situation with COVID-19 to do grassroots campaigning later down the road, in the meantime, we're doing a lot of Zoom, but also finding ways to reach out to the non-Zoomers, okay? And how do we do that? We have to do a lot of phone banking, texting, and so forth. And what's the motto I had before was coalition. So we take a lot of the local organizations, whether it's nonprofit, whether it's county chairs, whether it's organizations, Democratic or the Libertarian, or the neutral ones, the liberals or progressives. We work together and say, look, we want to disperse and educate people how important it is to vote. Because right now our whole nation has seen a movement of the racial injustice that's going on. We say, well, look, well, that's great what you're doing and stuff, but we also want to make sure that something positive comes out of that, which is voting. If you want change, it doesn't occur by going out there. If you want change, you need to vote. That's the only way you're going to have a voice. So we're educating people on the significance and importance of the judicial race for what they're trying to do with respect to the current movement, as well as other issues that has not been addressed, that could be addressed when we have the right judges and justices elected in the Supreme Court and the Court of Criminal Appeals. So without giving too much of our plans, but that's pretty much the gist of it. We understand that we have to be very elastic with our campaigning process. So we're changing a little bit on the things that we're used to.
Thank you. Does anybody else like to address that, kind of what you're doing? Because obviously it sounds like y'all are way ahead of the game. That's a new word I hadn't heard, a non-Zoomer. I'm gonna have to remember that. Which must mean, well, I don't know, I'm sure there's a few, but on there. Judge Williams, in Dallas, obviously you're kind of the north part of the state. Is there anything in particular going on up there that you can share with us about keeping folks engaged, not just in the runoff, but kind of looking forward to November?
Well, I think now the Supreme Court actually in their decisions have actually taken us to the forefront when people have heard about the rulings on vote by mail. You know, we had the hairdresser and the contempt, and then, you know, the Texas Supreme Court released this hairdresser out. So people now want to know, they're interested in the Supreme Court. They're interested in the Court of Appeals. So because these experiences have come to the forefront of their lives, they want to know about it. And you know, Zoom is my new best friend. You know, and just whenever we can talk, we're just really limited. We're in code red in Dallas now. We have to wear masks. It doesn't look like we're going to actually have to get a chance to go out and meet people. So we have to be, I mean, I'm open to all suggestions, but it's been really tough because it's also not only campaigning, but determining the appropriate time to campaign. For example, when the nation was in an uproar with the the various murders that have happened of Black men. I mean, I didn't think it was appropriate. I haven't thought that it was appropriate to start fundraising. My primary battle was challenging and I spent all my money, but there's also trying to find that delicate balance. Is this the time to go out? Is this really the time to ask for money? I had a conversation with a lawyer this morning, and you know, money's tight. You know, if people aren't having car accidents, then my PI attorneys, that flexible amount of money they had, they don't have it. So we're really walking a tightrope, but I just tell the Texas Supreme Court, keep issuing those decisions affecting everyday Texans.
Thank you, Judge Williams. And I think that is actually, we've put all the contact information for Rudy's campaign. So we'll do it for you. So we've got it out there on the chat function for that. And I will say I have a personal bone to pick with that hairdresser. It kind of guarantees that I'm not going to get a haircut unless I want to not move back to my house until this whole thing's over. So we'll see how that shakes out. Justice Triana, I know you kind of kicked us off. Is there anything about the Austin campaigning aspect that, I mean, it's not code red like Houston or Dallas, but it probably is still a challenge up there for you? Hold on, sorry, you're mute.
Thank you. Like I said, our numbers, you know, they are doubling at an enormously or too quick of a rate. And for the last 12 days, every day we break a record on how many days. So things I think are pretty crazy here, like they are in Dallas and Houston. I think, you know, everybody's trying to stay safe. We're all working from home. Our court has not gone back, and I don't know when we're going to go back. I know that Amy Clarke Meachum can talk Judge Meachum can talk about the district courts, but they're not having, you know, any hearings in person right now, and I'm not sure when that's going to get back to normal. So campaigning has been definitely a challenge. Asking for money is hard. I agree with you know, Judge Williams that it's hard to, while people are losing their jobs, while people are dealing with life and death pandemic issues, to ask for money to run a campaign. So it's been challenging here in Austin.
Thank you, Justice. Judge Clinton, I know you have to go. Any parting thoughts or suggestions? We had one, which I think is a really general, is what are you thinking? So I don't know what that means, but go ahead. What are you thinking?
Well, I do have to say think the criminal justice system and the amount of attention that it has gotten is in some ways underrated, because even though we do have protests and we have marches and we do have the deaths that we are talking about, there is also the fact that we have that are overpopulated right now. We have a Court of Criminal Appeals, the highest criminal court, that does not follow Supreme Court rulings, like in the Bobby Moore case on intellectual disability. We have a lot of issues that have not front in Texas, and are just the beginning. And to not have a discussion about these issues are doing Texans a disservice. As the United States, we know that we over-incarcerate people, but to do better, you have to choose people who are willing to tackle these very difficult issues and not just stay the course on longer incarcerations, or thinking that that actual innocence is something that is too lenient, as my opponent thinks. So we need to have some real talks about criminal justice that goes into the system and the changes beyond just the police department. And I hope that you'll have this conversation with us during this campaign. Mike, thank you so much for having me.
Actually, I got it. You caught my attention. You said your opponent thinks that actual innocence is too lenient a standard?
Yes, in one of the cases, Cheney, State versus Cheney, it was a bite mark case where the science on the bite mark was flawed. And so he actually, by majority decision, was given actual innocence status in a writ. And my opponent, in a dissent, said that he thought that the standard was too low, that it needs to be made higher. And so basically saying that actual innocence, harder to prove than it is now.
That sounds like kind of it must be guilty of something. Interesting. Okay. Well, that actually sounds like Caddyshack, where they had the judge where he says, yes, I sentenced boys younger than you to the gas chamber. I didn't want to, but I felt it was their own good. Is that kind of the same? Interesting. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us. I know you have a hearing, and thank you. I'll go ahead and open it up. I mean, we're perfectly on time, and we always appreciate that. We've got almost 200 people on here. Thank you. Any of our other folks who've already spoken want any last thoughts or things they want to share before we sign off?
Don't forget to vote in the primary, folks, for the runoffs.
Runoffs, right.
We have the Court of Appeals candidates who are in runoffs, besides Senator West, so don't forget.
Thank you, Ms. Cheng.
Thank you all for having us. One final pitch I'll put about mine and Judge Williams' day job, especially. I think we both would love to hear from lawyers from Houston, maybe even be back when you have a discussion about jury trials and proceeding with those, either by Zoom or in some sort of social distancing way. It's a very challenging time to be a trial judge in Texas. And I know she's been looking at the same data I have that's talking about how difficult it's going to be to have fair jury polls and the public health hazard that continues. So I would love to get information if you all have a conversation about that and a discussion about that, how we proceed in this time of a pandemic at the jury trial level, because that is something that all trial level judges are worrying about across the state. And I'm sure it's something that a good bulk of these members have been worrying about too. So I wanted to put that pitch in if you're going to have a discussion on that, because we would love to join you for it, I'm sure.
Thank you so much, Judge Meachum. Justice Triana, anything else you want to talk about?
No, we really appreciate you giving us the platform. We know that y'all are dedicated and do great things in Harris County. So keep up the good work and, go vote. And send us some money.
And send you some money. That's okay. I mean, I can only give you an easy question so many times. So thank y'all very much for being here. Just a reminder for everybody, July 9th, police reform. The reason why I think it's going to be especially interesting, it's going to be including people that are going to be responsible for doing it, hopefully after November. So it's not just speculation. This is real input by people that are going to be responsible, we all hope and expect. So thank you all for joining us. So we're going to go ahead and sign off. The chat has the—
Thank you so much.
That stuff. Thank you all.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.